Neil Sean here, welcome one and all to find out exactly what happened on this day in history. And as ever, thank you for supporting this particular strand. I do enjoy making it for you. As I say, we could do with a lot more people watching it. It's a fun, I think, just diversion from the problems of the day, don't you? You know, let's see what happened all those years ago, you know, when things seemed a lot nicer. But did they? You know, memories do play a funny trick, don't they? When you think about it, I'm sure you do. You look back at pictures and you think, why was I complaining? I had a waist then. I'm not the only one, am I? I know. We often think like that, don't we? But way back on this day in 1978, two very important people signed a contract, which was for something that would really change, kind of like the movie history, if you like. When I talk about this particular lady, she changed a whole fashion. When you think about it, everybody wanted to copy this look. This is the lady, that's right, the brilliant Bo Derek, the wife of John Derek, who was a sort of movie star of the 1950s, and he was previously married to Linda Evans, incredibly like Bo Derek too, obviously a certain type. She of course went on to global fame playing Crystal Carrington in Dynasty, but back to Bo, and in particular Dudley Moore, because on this day, 1978, they agreed in principle to star in this movie called 10. Well, it was sort of a racy movie put together by Blake Edwards and produced and directed by him alongside another plethora of talents. Now, Blake Edwards, of course, was the husband of the brilliant Dame Julie Andrews. So a bit of a radical sort of thing for him to do as well, rather saucy for him at that time. Now, you have to remember just what a big impact this movie made because, as I say, it launched Bo Derek as a star, and it really did launch a fashion of braided hair. Everybody wanted that look. Now, I do remember a girl at school, we were too young to see the film because it was an X-rated film, but I do remember a girl at school being sent home because she'd had it done at the weekend, and apparently it was in proper attire to attend school like that. Can you imagine today? They wouldn't get sent home for that now, would they? Totally different. If you haven't seen 10, do check it out. It's a very fun comedy, as ever, with the brilliant comic talent of the late Dudley Moore, one of my favourites. But what else happened on this day? Also on this day in 1989, early 90, you could be sitting on a bit of a fortune, and let me explain. Because this board game, Straight from the Heart, which featured the pop idol of the moment, Jason Donovan, who'd had the biggest selling solo album of 1989-1990 with his debut album, 10 Good Reasons, was simply riding high. Everybody wanted to buy this board game. Now, here's my feeling about this. When you think about a board game, everyone's the same, isn't it, really? But when you put a picture of it on, of a teen idol, lots of young girls will buy it. I know Jason a little bit, interviewed him many times. What's interesting is apparently now it's a collector's item. So get up in the loft, you never know. You could be sitting on a fortune. Jason's got about 4 apparently, and they were, big sellers. I'm not sure if board games are still big today, do you? I quite like Snakes and Ladders, all that sort of stuff, but you don't see many people playing them anymore. It's all electronic games, isn't it? But way back in 1990, 89, on this day, well, it would have been the game that you may have bought for someone coming up for Christmas. But what else has ever happened on this day? On this day, a pop rocker who trailblazed through the charts in the early 70s, all thanks to Chin and Chapman, Chinny Chap as they were called. They created so many hits for this lady. Now, in some parts of the world, you may recall her as starring in Happy Days. She was also in the stage version of Annie Get Your Gun. But over here, she is known simply as Suzi Quatro. Suzi had mega hits with the likes of Devil Gate Drive, Can the Can, and 21, so many more, all thumping sort of hits that if you put them on today in any party, they simply would take off. An American icon, a lady that really does say everything about America to a certain generation. We're talking a very young movie star who took the world by storm, made famous a track called On the Good Ship Lollipop. Are you with me? Shirley Temple. Now, Shirley Temple had been a megastar at 20th Century Fox for years, and she was probably one of the very first movie stars that were able to sell image dolls of themselves, life-size dolls. There even was a Shirley Temple perm. Can you imagine wanting to have your hair permed like that, but that's what people did back in the day. On this day in August of that year, what was interesting was that Shirley Temple decided that she wanted to move into the world of politics. It was fully confirmed on August 29th, but it was on this day that she formally decided. Made a very successful career, of course, for herself in the world of politics, but will be forever known as one of the very first brilliant child stars. Do you remember Shirley Temple? He was a king of rock and roll even before Elvis for a very short period. He had a kiss curl, he had a trench coat, and he rode into Waterloo Station in London on this day in 1957. Well, actually, I should say he rode in February, but on this day in 1957 there was a big breaking news story because allegedly Bill Haley, along with his Comets, who created a bit of a storm over here earlier in the year with a tour that saw people ripping up cinema seats, throwing pianos off stages and creating an absolute, havoc when you think about it, through hits like Rock Around the Clock, Shake, Rattle and Roll. All sounded quite the same when you think about it now, didn't they? But he apparently left one of his trench coats in a hotel on the tour. Someone found it and they were offering it for sale via a newspaper. It was worth allegedly quite a lot of money. His star shone brightly for years, but it started to fade literally the minute Elvis arrived. But for that moment, if you could afford those £2.72, you too could have been the owner of Bill Haley's trench coat. Can you imagine if you got it today? How much would it be worth? Plus, I might point out that a lot of people were speculating if it truly was, or was somebody obviously trying to make a fast buck. On this day, 1957, it was announced that our gracious monarch of 70 years, Queen Elizabeth II, would be visiting Canada on the 12th of September. I love the way when you look back at royal sort of announcements, it was very short lead. There wasn't so much publicity in advance. And I think that's really to do with the fact that, sort of marketing was different. There was a lot more respect, and the fact that it was, announced and people would be expected to turn out and see her. The tour was an incredible success, by the way, and a lot of people, correct me if I'm wrong, if you do remember this visit, they literally did copy a lot of the dresses that the wonderful Queen was wearing. She was, in that period, a fashion icon. Finally, on this day in 1957, our gracious monarch, Her Majesty the Queen, finally agreed to this. But this was really radical because we're talking about her annual Christmas message, which would be televised for the very first time this coming Christmas. Now, centred upon, did Her Majesty the Queen like the look and the sound of herself on a television screen? This really would change the face, voice and look of the British monarchy. When you think about it now, we all settle down, don't we? Particularly over here in the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland at 3 p.m. to wallow to see what our gracious monarch is going to say about the year that she's had, and obviously share her joy and thoughts with us. Nowadays, of course, a lot of people look to her sideboard to see what pictures are on it. But way back in 1957, this was a more formal affair. And more importantly, I'm told Her Majesty the Queen was more concerned whether anyone would tune in. Of course, when you look back, you can see that not a lot of people had television sets in that particular era, but literally millions tuned in, making it the most watched programme of that year. So she'd no need to worry. And that's continued year on year. Millions around the world tuning to see our wonderful monarch and her message every Christmas. But it all started finally on this day in 1957. To date with all the latest breaking news that happened on this day. Now, will I see you tomorrow? Neil Sean in the very heart of London.